Today, we are talking to the Director of Licensing about the role of licensing in the child welfare process. Join us today on Fostering the Future.
Welcome to the Fostering the Future podcast, a show about all things child welfare, dependency, adoption, and foster care. Here are your hosts, veterans in the world of child welfare, Jack and Kat.
We believe that every human has incredible and equal value regardless of what side of the courtroom we sit on. We hope that everyone feels welcome and accepted here on Fostering the Future.
Make sure you follow us on Facebook or Instagram as Fostering the Future Podcast, or check us out on our website at fosteringthefuturepodcast.org.
This is Kat, and I'm here with Jack, and today we have a special guest, Red, who is a licensing director.
So, Red, let me ask you a very serious question. What is your favorite drink at Starbucks?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that, Jack. I'm sitting here with a venti caramel macchiato in front of me. The only thing missing is the extra shot of espresso.
Oh.
Which maybe you needed, and it smells so good.
It's Jack Daddy's favorite.
I'm going to try one. It smells so good. I don't usually drink any coffee at all.
Red, can you tell me what your current position is and what that entails?
Sure. So for the past 3 years, I have been a part of an agency that oversees the licensed foster homes.
So this is a really big job, and you affect a lot of people in the area, adults and children.
Yes, thank you. And sometimes you don't think of it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it just feels like trying to get people through some of the worst times, whether it be a situation with getting a kid to the doctor or not having the right paperwork. So I appreciate hearing that, because sometimes it just feels like you're in a whirlwind of chaos all day long.
I'm sure it does. So I understand that you oversee licensing, which includes initial licensing of a home.
Right.
Licensing and placement. Is that everything?
Main arena is the licensing department. We work so closely with the placement department because for us in licensing, one of our major jobs is to know our families and know their strengths, know what the needs they have may be when it comes to children. So part of that is being able to work with other departments' placement directly to make sure that we're doing the best that we can for both the children and our families who take in those kiddos.
Okay. Can you explain the difference in the functions of those departments?
So we have an initializing department, which means that any home that potentially wants to become a foster parent will start in that arena. They'll start with the initial licensing specialist as they move through the process of getting licensed, going through classes, having home visits, all the different inspections and certificates of completion you have to hand in. Once you obtain your foster care license, you then rotate over to a relicensing specialist. So then that's kind of like your case manager. If you look at the big picture within child welfare, we know our children have case managers attached to them. So that licensing specialist is like your case manager. So they're there to get you whatever you need to help guide, hook you up to the right people if there's something that we can't assist with. But it's so much more because we oftentimes are those emotional containers for our foster parents because, you know, and I have to say our foster parents are really our heroes because they walk into this not knowing much about, you know, maybe the history of a child, and you're dealing with the fallouts, the tantrums, the triggers that you don't even know about. So for us in licensing too, it's a really great opportunity to be able to be that sounding board or just a place to vent and maybe just validate that someone is not crazy. I think some of us probably all consider ourselves crazy
A
at
little
one
bit
point or
crazy.
another in this field. It's so important for all the way from upper leadership to, the specialists that are boots on the ground running to be able to make those connections and offer support.
In your real life experience with your licensing specialist, they're like your person. As a foster mom, all of these people all these partners that are involved, including yourself, are there for the kids and there for the biological parents. Nobody out there is really going to be advocating for the foster mom except for licensing. I have been so beyond blessed to have like the two best licensing people ever. I feel like with both of them that I could go to them and just like vent and say, I'm so fresh, and not have them judge me and be like, think that I'm like a bad person or a bad mom or like, that I don't have a good attitude or whatever, that they understand like what we're going through. Anytime I've had a situation where I needed a case manager to do something, or I needed something from whatever partner for these kids, and they can't do it, my licensing person's always like, you can't get it done, I'll get it done for you.
That's
like,
so nice.
It's really an advocate for a foster parent more than like making sure you're following the rules. Like, yeah, they come to my house, they make sure that I didn't leave soap out. They make sure that
Isn't that the truth?
The dog food's put away. But and we were talking in another episode about how licensing, like, it's not about the rules, it's about keeping kids safe. And even if there's a rule and you think it's stupid, there's probably something stupid that somebody did that made that rule happen. And when we get those emails from our licensing,
yes.
and you're like,
Oh, yes.
what? Like,
Who did this?
so, I really don't see them as like, they're here to make sure like I don't step out of line. Like, they're here to help me. They're here to like support my family, to support my kids. My first licensing specialist met me at the hospital at like almost midnight one night because my kid wouldn't stop throwing up, and sat there with me and brought me Starbucks. Like, this is not. And
I mean, I did that too. Just
I mean, you definitely did. but you're my friend, not my licensing specialist.
Totally.
So,
That's like a valuable
like, that's
person to have.
amazing, especially in
It
child
is.
welfare when everybody's so overworked that this woman would like take time out of her personal life to come and sit at the hospital. She didn't have to do that.
She didn't have to do that. And I feel like most of the complaints I get from people that I work with in child welfare, it's because they have no resources or because they have no power. And it's someone who's giving you power. Like, you can't do something, let me help you.
Yeah. And that's it. And it's really hard to be in licensing because we are there to ensure compliance with our foster homes and Department of Children and Families. But in the same token, we are there to just be a support and a guide. We don't ultimately control which way a case is going to go. And, as much as we can advocate and pull together meetings, sometimes it doesn't go the way that maybe we would all want it to go, and so it's a fine line, because sometimes we wish we could do so much more, but just to be there and walk alongside somebody during one of these difficult times is just more than gratifying for us.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of licensing.
I mean,
so.
that really, like, that's the definition of a good relationship, is just holding space for each other. And that sounds like it's a lot of what licensing is doing.
Absolutely, and I like that word you used, holding space, because that is it. That is 100% exactly what we do for, not only our families, but stepping in for other, specialist families. I mean, there's a lot of on-call duties that go into licensing, and so, we may have a staff that goes out to a home that they're not assigned to because they're there to support, and that's really, the big thing, whether it's 10 o'clock at night, 4 o'clock in the morning, you will always find somebody with licensing. To be there as a support.
And the other thing I would say is, in child welfare, it's hard to get callbacks, from pretty much every other partner except for licensing. If I text or call my licensing specialist, I really do not wait long, if at all. So
that's amazing.
It's definitely huge on the support side. So these different departments that you oversee, how do they collaborate and share information?
So, we have a lot of meetings, a lot of coming together. I mean, the biggest thing within this field, and I think sometimes it's really hard for people to see the bigger picture, but how each of us affect one another. So for example, placement, if they don't have all of the information about a child and they call a foster family accepts and they weren't given all the information. So now we kind of have a domino effect. And even for licensing, us coming out, we like to be out there whenever our families get children, or if it's a new child, a brand new family, we want to be out there to support them. And kind of our hands are tied as those pieces within the system break down. So the biggest aspect, I think, in collaboration is really that communication and the constant communication. Maybe it's not just one meeting a day. There are times where I've spoken to placement probably 6 or 7 times. Sometimes I wonder if they're like, if they're probably sick of hearing from me at that point. But we all have each other's numbers on speed dial, and that's really it's up to us to model what partnership should look like.
With these departments, how do you keep the cohesion between them?
We do the best that we can. I think when we're on the phone, when we can sense one of us is struggling, it doesn't matter whether it's from your own team or from another team, but there's someone there to step in and try and point out some of the good things that are happening. And maybe we didn't get that sibling group of 6 placed together, but you know what? We got 3 of them together in one home and we got 3 in another home together. So, we have limited resources. If we had a home for every child, I mean, ideally that would be the best solution we could ever have, is more people stepping up, because it is kids within our own community. And I know not everybody can be a foster parent or wants to do that, but there's something that everybody can do to support our families and to support our community, because we're all here to really work to strengthen families and family units and family systems, whether that means a reunification or even, trying to fit a new child into one of our foster families' homes. It can be hard. I mean, and especially for a child trying to fit into a home that they have no idea. If you could imagine showing up to a brand new home when you've lived the last 6 years under a certain set of rules, and now I have to take my shoes off when I come in the door. I mean, I can't even imagine. And so this little bit that we can do to talk to one another and to really facilitate communication is going to be the best step for everybody involved in this.
That sounds amazing. It sounds like you're running a great department.
We're trying.
Yeah.
But again, it's never like that all the time. We do have our moments. And again, that's where we have to come together, because we are all we have. We know we're privatized in Florida, but there's not a lot of people shouting out, "You did a really good job," and I think for all of us that have some sort of involvement or are familiar with the child welfare system, there's oftentimes a lot of finger pointing at the bad things that are happening, and sometimes we forget about all the good. And we have to take the small pieces, whatever that may be, finally locating a long-term placement for a kid, we have to take those wins. And so helping each other acknowledge that and recognize that, hey, we did do something good today.
Yeah, that's amazing. What was your first experience with foster care? How did you learn about foster care? Did you know any foster kids growing up?
I actually, and it's so weird because I didn't pay much attention to it. And, not until you get into something do you start to realize maybe some of those signs or patterns within your life. So in high school, I definitely had one friend, and it didn't make sense. She didn't live, that wasn't her real address. She was staying with some, I didn't put 2 and 2 together. And I guess maybe, in hindsight, knowing what I know now, I probably could have asked more questions, but I didn't. And so, kind of once we graduated and like meeting her large amount of brothers and sisters, I'm like, this is like, it didn't make sense. So, and that really was kind of a moment for me in choosing which direction I was going. So growing up, my mom was a nurse, and that was what I wanted to do.
Me too.
She was like, you don't want to do this. You don't want to do this. And so, I've always kind of had a fear of needles, and being her being a nurse and maybe practicing giving her a flu shot here and there on an like I couldn't take it. And she's like, you better find a new career. So I'm like, what can I do that I'm still going to have an impact? And so
I think you found it.
Yeah. So I went into I decided this was the avenue. Now, did I ever think in a million years I'd end up in child welfare? No, but through my different changes, I worked with pregnant and parenting teens that were actually diverted from their children being removed. That's kind of what got me into it. And that was through an agency out of state. So that was wonderful. It really gave me a lot of hope, because there are people that want to change. And so I think I saw that aspect where maybe not having much systematic knowledge or really knowing, I think, as we all think sometimes, when people aren't able to maybe care for the kids the way they want to, we think there's a problem with them and what are they doing wrong? And it's not always that. There's unfortunately some other things that come into play, addictions, illnesses that are unseen mental health needs that we don't really pay much attention to or didn't have a reason to before. So for me, that was really big in kind of getting my feet wet. And I'll never forget the first, I was at a home visit, and when I started this job, it was not really in a great part of town, but they told me, I walked in and I had on like cute little heels on for the first day. And they're like, oh, no, Red, this is not going to work. And so I'm like, what do you mean? I had my first experience with that. In experiencing a teen who was pregnant and her daughter, and a mother that had a severe drug addiction, and the impact that played. So that kind of was a whole new thing for me. But then I moved out of state and here. And so it was a struggle trying to figure out where I wanted to be. And then I actually, 12 years ago, I started in placement. So I definitely can speak on behalf of that. I know the struggles they experience. I know how hard it is. You have to present a child that maybe doesn't have such a great history to a family that, the amount of times my hands would be shaking. I got the cold sweats. Like, I don't know what's going to happen here. But, but that's the biggest thing, is just being able to find the strengths of children and really look at a lot of our families. And there's so many of our families that meet those characteristics of the needs of children we have. And it's so amazing to be able to take strengths of parents and be able to pair that with needs of children and the progress that's seen. That's the ideal goal.
I would imagine that's so fulfilling.
It is. Like, there's days where, I think we all have that, where you kind of, you sigh and you're like, am I really doing good in this world? And so there may be one thing that happens, or a call, or hearing from a foster family that maybe is no longer licensed, because that is what we do in licensing. I remember when I was kind of more boots on the ground running, going to a home and sitting down for a family meal with them. And that's how we did the relicensure visit, and all their kids were around, and just, that it's like you're a part of the family. And that's one of the amazing things about our jobs and licensing too, is getting to know these families and the children, and like just seeing, children thrive, not just foster children, but even birth children who maybe just, are not used to having, other kids around them all the time, and just, social skills that are getting better, and just communication skills, and just from being around other kids. And so it's amazing. And I could keep going on forever.
My own kids, and I don't have any foster kids, they have learned things from being around Jack's kids, foster kids, and adopted kids that I never could have taught them.
And that's such a, and I'll say this to a lot of our families. Earlier on, I think it really just adds another perspective to your life. And I don't want to say almost like a well-roundedness, but just really being real with the problems in the world, or the problems in our own community, and just the things, the trauma, the experiences that some kids go through that other kids don't. It's just makes you think every day that you have what you have, and you've kind of grown up the way that you have.
Yeah, and you can't transplant that. You have to experience it.
Yeah, and I think that, I definitely see a compassion in my kids that I know comes from being a foster family. The way that they are compassionate and nurturing to the kids that come into my house blows me away. And every time I see it, I just want to bawl. Like today, my 4-year-old, one of my new placements, who is 2, was upset about something, and seeing how my 4-year-old walked over to him and wrapped his arms around him, and actually even my 11-year-old, who is an 11-year-old boy, sometime in the past day, my 11-year-old son actually physically carried my 7-year-old foster son to me, holding him like a baby, and said, 7-year-old needs some sugar, and handed him to me. And the 7-year-old just kind of melted on my lap and kissed my cheek. And I hugged him. And I'm like, did you need some loving? And he's like, yeah. And so, you know, seeing the way that they recognize emotions and know that, you know, even though all of my kids in my house have been through trauma, you know, all of my children are adopted, but they're so focused on other people's trauma. And the way that they love people just always blows me away. And, you know, when you're having these times where you're like, oh, you know, maybe we need to stop, maybe it's affecting my kids negatively, and then you just see what beautiful people they've become because they were foster brothers.
You know, and you said something so important right there too, because we in licensing, yeah, it's about foster parents, that's our job, it's support, educate, and guide, but I think so many times we forget about the kids that are in the home prior to foster kids coming in, and how are they feeling? How are they doing with all of this? And you know, and because we tend to think about adults a lot of times, but the impact that it can have on, you know, your own children and children affected by kids transitioning out of the home without proper transitions. That, I mean, we think about what happens to foster kids without proper transitions. We have our own kids that are experiencing, you know, the same types of things. And I think sometimes they're easily forgotten amongst all of the other things that pop up with the system. So it's really important to make sure that we're always checking in, not just with our adult foster families, but our children involved with those foster families. And just as you said, I mean, you think about whether it's worth it sometimes, and just those little hints of even what you've shared, Jack, has been so beneficial.
That's another thing is when we talk to people who want to be foster parents, but they're holding off for something, you know, a lot of the things I hear is, I'm waiting for my kids to get older, or I'm worried about how it would affect my kids. And, you know, I try and encourage them and tell them that, you know, it can affect your kids in such positive ways.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Well, and I know I've told this story, but like, I'm not a foster parent, but we have definitely spent a lot of time together. and I mean, my kids can definitely be extremely self-centered, which is developmentally appropriate. But I know we were here, you know, like 11 when you got a call once for a baby. And it was like so heartwarming to see my boys, who really don't want to do anything but be on their devices, like come, and they went through your baby stuff with your 11-year-olds. And to find all your baby supplies, storage room.
We'll do that again next week, maybe.
That late night call for that. I know that all too well.
And I think my youngest ended up falling asleep with your 3-pack, the girls. They all like huddled up, and then my boys, like, I think the 3 boys, like, got the stuff together. I don't see them do that. I like, you know, and like, we just do stuff for our kids all the time, which is wonderful. That's how I wanted my life to be. I didn't want my kids to suffer, but the consequence of that is that they don't live a life of doing things for other people. They live a life where they get served a lot. So it was really nice. And then we stayed up till like 2 a.m. And I think the only one who made it was my 11-year-old. But he changed her diaper. He fed her. I don't remember if we bathed her. But like, it was nice. Yeah. It was really nice to see like the empathy and the kindness, and they were so excited.
It's amazing to see what kids have, you know, bottled up inside of them sometimes, and when, you know, at the right moments, those pieces of maybe you've doubted how you've parented your child or whether they've picked up enough, and those truly shine through in situations like this.
It is so true.
Okay, so let me ask you a question, Red. Can you tell me about the formal education you completed?
Sure. So I have a bachelor's degree. I majored in psychology. I minored in sociology and anthropology with like a focus on race and ethnic relations.
Oh, that's a good one.
I know.
That was interesting.
Well, and it's a funny story behind all of that, because where I grew up was predominantly, you know, we were a Caucasian community. And so I did live abroad for a little while, and that was a huge eye-opener for me.
I'm sure it was.
To be the minority, where most times, you know, we're a majority. And I hate to say it like that, but it really opened up my eyes to a lot, and that was really one of the reasons why I focused solely on the race and ethnic relations. And, you know, turns out it paid off, although I did take French and all through, you know, school, and I moved down here, and French is not as common as Spanish was, so, you know, you can't win them all, but keep on going.
So you've shared a little bit about your career, but can you give us just like a little breakdown of what you've done? Can you share an overview?
Absolutely. So So when I got out of school, I really, I didn't have a desire to go back for a master's because I wasn't sure if that's really what I wanted. I think we all get out of school sometimes and just sit and go, what is next for me? And so I had that moment, and I was a waitress, and then I was doing some pregnancy and HIV counseling, and that was super rewarding, but, the struggles of seeing women not be able to have children or have children and maybe did not, want to care for them full term. So that was really a struggle, and that kind of is when I figured I wanted to go and help. I wanted to help those that wanted to parent their children. And so that's when I got into a case manager for pregnant and parenting teens, and then eventually into child protection. And then I switched states and came down here and waited for a while to figure out where I wanted to be, but started in placement, and just through my experience, I've been doing initials. I've worked in the therapeutic foster care realm. I have worked in a different area. I do also, I'm a yoga instructor and teach spinning and rowing. So two of my friends started a not-for-profit organization where we bring our passion and our love for yoga and all the benefits it brings us to at-risk youth. So amazing. We bring a curriculum that we've developed into, it's about a 12-week program. So we will go into group homes, we'll go to DJJ facilities. So we just have really, been trying to bring the benefits that we experienced from, meditation, from just the holding space, to being resilient, to finding our power in every situation. So we're helping bring that to kids kind of through all of that, and then just continuing to be in this field and taking every training opportunity that I can to enhance skills and just relationship building. I mean, I feel like so many times it's like, well, could you do the job? Yeah, I could, but it's not even about checking boxes. It's about learning about people and interacting and seeing how you can best support them. So although we like to think, hey, a bachelor's is what it takes to do this, and it does on paper, there's so much more to it than just, a degree.
Well, and speaking to that, do you think that your formal education prepared you in any ways for, your career, or do you think it was really just a means to get into the career?
Yeah, I think the latter of the options. And I mean, I'll tell you, philosophy, I'm not remembering anything I learned when I was required to take or statistics. I mean, yes, that's important, but I don't. I mean, and I guess it really depends on what kind of learner you are. I know for me, I am hands-on. So you tell me to read this book and then go do something, I don't know that that's going to be the best way I learn, but I would say I would attribute everything that I know. I mean, yes, we go through training, we do that, but I would say, concepts are there, but it's putting those concepts into real life practice and being able to relate it to what you're doing now. I mean, and this is going to sound so silly because this is not, but I often think I love Law and Order SVU because oftentimes it relates to what I do. So for me, it's like being able to pull something over and relate it to what I'm doing for real life is just, but I would say that I don't think that I would be here or have the skills or the knowledge that I have from just a 4-year degree. Again, I mean, if it doesn't involve, 65C45 or Florida statute or Chapter 39, sometimes I feel like I don't know it.
I mean, I certainly, I just met you, so I don't know, but, I love that you're so personally fulfilled because, I'm sure that it brings a lot of fulfillment to the culture of the people that you're working with.
It's funny that you say that because we do. There's times where we go through and I think being in this and doing it every day and living, although I'm not caring for the kids directly, we kind of are caring for our parents, we're caring for those in the system, because if I talk to a case manager and I hear them struggle, I'm not just going to say, okay, well, you need to do this.
Figure it out, buddy.
We're going to support each other.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. I mean, I could be a case manager, I could be a director, I could be the executive director. And it doesn't matter the level. We only have each other. And we know the retention is not great in this field. So anything that we can do to keep each other going, I mean, I'm positive now, but maybe a week ago, if you caught me a week ago, I probably wouldn't be. But that's what we say to our parents, our foster parents, is practicing self-care. And that is a big thing for me. And I mean, going through COVID, and I think we all can say that definitely tested my ability. I'm a people person. I want to be face to face, and to not be able to do that and to be stuck. I mean, I think for anyone that does work in this field, you know, it's not a 40-hour job. And if you think it's going to be a 40-hour job, like, nah, you might want to find something else, because we know that is not what happens.
Yeah.
So I would say that the self-care piece is what has allowed me to remain.
What is one word you think would people would use to describe licensing?
Well, I'm going to tell you the word I hope people would describe licensing with. I think if I were to just pick one word, it's so hard, but I would think support. That to me is what it should be. If it's not, please call me, because I want to know. But
Okay, so Red, how do you see the role of licensing in child welfare?
okay, so well, I think I mentioned a little bit about how we are really a support for the foster parents, but and I know you mentioned this, Jack, and kind of talking about how you rely on your licensing. I mean, it could be from a placement form that shows you have custody of a child, to getting a Medicaid number because you're at the doctor, or to getting a social security number. So I guess for licensing, I have to say we wear many different hats, because most times you probably get that call from your licensing specialist about taking a child because we have seen a child that might fit really well in your family. So I would say we encompass a very large piece of the system. I mean, if you have an issue with your board rate check, call us. If you've got, an issue about adoptions, call us. So I feel like we do have the knowledge. Maybe we can't do all of the tasks that everybody can do, but I think we are probably the go-to person. Like, if you are a foster parent and we get a call, we will get you to where you need to go. So a lot of times we're considered like a mediator. Sometimes there is going to be tension between case management relationships and caregiver relationships. So we will be the buffer, if you will, or try and be that mediator and pull a meeting together. How do we get everybody back on the same page? How do we bridge the lack of communication that is happening? And we pride ourselves on doing that. We respond quickly. That is one of the things that we do pride ourselves on. That's the one thing that we are here for, is when nobody else maybe picks up the phone.
Yeah.
We do.
You know what this reminds me of? Do you ever watch those like home shows where they're like rebuilding a home, or like the home reno shows?
Yeah.
And they say the house has good bones. It sounds like licensing is good bones.
It
We
is.
do. I like that. I think I'm going to start using that, Kat.
Oh, well, it sounds like your licensing department has
Yeah,
good bones.
we do. We have good bones.
It does sound like licensing does have to be like the integrity of the agency, though, because you touch everything.
We do. And that is a really great way to describe it. I mean, especially when it comes to our foster parents, we will advocate. We will advocate till we are blue in the face when something does not go the right way. So I think it's really important that you have that support and that backup and that advocacy on your behalf, because you are out advocating for our children and what they need. So the least we can do is to kind of have your back on that piece too. But we are still going to be those people that will tell you that is not correct. But maybe not in the same way as it comes across maybe from a judge or a case manager.
Right.
I think there's a lot of nurturing involved in building our relationships.
Yeah, I definitely feel like my experiences with my licensing specialist, like they've been like part of the family.
We do a good job of at least being able to take those heavy times and put a little bit of lightness into them. I feel blessed in our role that we get that exposure with our families that do so much good in this community.
Do you know what the average time that a foster parent normally keeps their doors open for?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this. So we have a lot of meetings and really look at a lot of trends within the system. And so I can tell you that in the past few years, we really have been exploring the length of time. I would say right now, the average which would be anywhere between about 5 to 7 years. We are seeing a higher trend, though, of a shorter licensure time, but I do have to say that I really do believe it's because of COVID. And just some of the impact having kids with you all the time. And whereas we might have been able to maintain some of those families, people have adopted and have moved on from the system. Our closure reasons tend to be because of changes in household composition, maybe a job change, maybe a new addition to your family. Maybe you adopted, or maybe there's some behavioral things going on with one of your child, moving out of the area, just any type of change within that household that maybe does not facilitate a lifestyle for fostering anymore. The second highest thing we see is adoption, which is always a great thing, because while it's wonderful that we are able to locate forever families for children in the system, that means that we also don't have that many beds left either.
Right.
So, but I'm never sad to see someone, because you get into this and if you have the ability to expand your family through the foster care system, that is amazing. And, and even if you don't, the amount of maybe not gratification immediately, but down the road. And the amount of times I hear our foster families getting a message from a kid who maybe the ending didn't go so well, or just, hey, I really appreciate that one thing you did for me, whereas maybe as a foster family you didn't even think it was that big of a deal. So yeah.
Well, that's actually encouraging, because I didn't. 5 to 7 years is actually a bit longer than I would have thought. It's just lately I've been like, where'd they all go?
And you're exactly right, because and just to see now, I'm not saying that I'm super old or I've been around for 30 plus years, but I will tell you, it just, things have changed. And I think it's very similar to kind of what we've seen in the change in workforce, even within the child welfare system. There's a lot of people that had hung in there for so long and then just kind of were like, I think it's time. But then you've got a lot of new people coming in and, exiting pretty quickly, which we kind of sometimes see with our foster families. And, we can prepare somebody as best we can, but when you get into it, it's a whole different experience. So I think the ones that we see for a shorter time maybe struggle more with the gray of the system. A lot of times you want a black or a white answer, and we're never going to have that here. And so that's where, for some folks, it's too much chaos.
Do you think that there is a way, or there could be a way, to predict the longevity of a foster home or of a placement?
I do. We've kind of talked about, getting into fostering versus maybe going the adoption route. I think through getting to know our families, we know that the word gets out there that people want to adopt, and that, they get into the foster system to do that. So I think we can see already a little bit of that. And I'm not saying it's a terrible thing, because we do know that it's a very common thing, but that's maybe what our struggle is sometimes, is balancing that, knowing that reunification is always that first goal. So I think we can see through expectations or wants of families coming into the system, or why they're coming in, as to what that length of time may look like. Because and it's funny, because it sure is the truth that those families that we get in that are like, nope, I just want to foster, not going to adopt, always end up with the kids that have the opportunity, that maybe the relatives have fallen through, any non-relatives, and that is the next option would be to ask the foster families, and they're like, well, now, the kid's a part of my family, of course I'm going to keep them. And I think we know and I'll use this term, resiliency. So, and that goes for not just our children, but for our families. Can you bounce back after someone shows up a half an hour late to pick up a child, or doesn't show up when they scheduled a home visit? So I think we're always looking at that. And then, of course, whether we as licensing or if we're an effective mechanism for that family, can we support them? Can we help them to sustain, if you will, or give them the resources that is going to help them extend their career in fostering, if you will? Because sometimes when you're done, and no matter what we do, it's just, you need a break, and you need to take that time away. So I think we can, in a way, project what that longevity would be for not just a placement, because I think we know when it comes to placement disruptions or placement stability, there are some signs that you start to see, and the small things, diminishing pleasure, and then kind of things just kind of nothing looks good anymore. Now the bad outweighs the good, and then that straw gets placed on the back and the hump breaks, and then we're out looking. So I think we really can. But I think that we need to do a better job at listening for those red flags or those words that are going to help us explore a certain area a little bit more, like frustrations with the system. We know. I mean, I think that probably is one of the number one reasons unsaid that people get out, because we do track that, but I don't think I've ever had a family tell me that they're just leaving or closing their license because they don't like how the system runs. There is always another piece to that. But I can't say the system is pretty, and we can do what we can, but
I mean, what I always say is, like, the system's going to be there whether I'm there or not.
Yeah.
But if I'm there, maybe I can help.
And you can. It's like that sand dollar story or the starfish story where it's like, you can't get them all, but maybe you can help just one.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the mindset that we have to take being here. If I could say what would fix this is we wouldn't even need a system. We wouldn't need to have this, because we would have everybody in the community stepping up and not having to wait till we get to pulling kids from home. So, but I would say that communication is huge, and probably the biggest piece is going to be common courtesy and kindness. I think we forget about that. We're all human. Whether we agree or disagree on something, we should, as humans and as adults and as professionals, be able to agree to disagree and do what's best for the children. And sometimes we lose sight of that.
Yeah, everybody has value no matter where they are.
Yep.
Yeah,
in the system.
absolutely. All right. Something we definitely don't like to talk about a lot, but sometimes foster homes have to be closed, right?
Yep.
What is the criteria used when deciding to close a home?
So there's a lot of factors, because we are always weighing good standing. So we have our code, which dictates kind of what the rules and regulations are for licensing. It can be extremely difficult to revoke a foster care license, because as long as minimum standards are met, folks can get licensed, but the situation then comes that it's up to that agency to decide whether they're going to place children or not. So, we like quality homes. And so what I would say about this is that when we see patterns, when we see trends of things happening, there's going to be a lot of changes in the system too that are going to probably, I think, help a little bit more in kind of making sure we are staying compliant. But when we talk about homes closing for not voluntary reasons, it would be something that would be pretty serious. For that to happen. I mean, I think we all know there's been crimes committed, things that have happened that involve criminal aspects. That is kind of a no-brainer. Children do get removed from their homes for reasons like that. So we can't have folks in the system that are not to a standard that would be of quality. So, but that being said, we have to be fair. We have to have mechanisms for that check and balance, and really making sure that our own opinions aren't outweighing what is really the truth or what should be happening. I think there's a lot of people that are passionate in the system, and sometimes that can blur your lens when we're looking at compliance. So we have a lot of checks and balances. There's a lot of quality reviews that occur to really make sure that a decision to not place in a foster home.
I think I heard that a long time ago, is that you don't take the license away, but you just do not place anymore if something happens like
and
that.
So that's kind of the way that we look at it, because and I'll give an example of somebody that has maybe a verified abuse report. Fine, doesn't mean that you can't foster, you could, because it meets a minimum standard, but that doesn't mean that a child placing agency would place children into that home. So you're right, it would take a lot of paperwork, pretty serious things to actually revoke a license. So most times, if we go to a quality assurance staffing or a licensing review or a review because of some sort of pattern or questions about the home, then it's a committee making the decision, and there's information gathered, and we would say at this point we wouldn't place children, but it would be up to that family to decide if they wanted to relinquish their license, or if we would have to move forward in pursuing if we had enough to revoke somebody's license.
What realistic solutions do you think that could be implemented to resolve some of the placement struggles if you had unlimited resources?
Oh, goodness. Kind of goes back to what I said. If we had the ability to have our neighbor step up, or, somebody in that child's life that could step up immediately. Ideally, it would be for that child to be able to go with his friend or his aunt or the neighbor or somebody that he can trust or she can trust. And be with that person versus having to cross all of that red tape. And, and ideally if the funds could be allocated to help people do that, because I know sometimes it is difficult to care for other people's children without a little additional support financially. But I mean, when people think about this board payment, I mean, if anyone thinks that they're going to make money, it's funny because I love to break it down for everybody. And most times, our foster parents are spending way more than what they're getting. I mean, between daycare and diapers, diapers alone will put you out, if you have a little...
Yes, it was Red. I think it's really important for everyone on all sides of the table to learn to work with each other as well as possible, so that we can make it easier for each other and not harder, and also so we can all encourage each other to keep the focus on the kids. What are some basic things that foster parents can do to work better with licensing and make your teams more efficient?
Oh, I'm so glad this is a question, because I will tell you, communicate with us. So many times I feel like we have found something out, or we've run a DMV check and find something, and it's like, that is the worst thing, to have to call someone and say, hey, how come you didn't tell us? And so I think a lot of times most people fear that we're going to be upset, that we're going to yell, and it's not that. I will tell you, the biggest thing you can do is communicate to your licensing person, because we are going to be those ones to back you up and to support you. I think we all know that abuse and neglect happens. Allegations come in, calls come into the hotline, and 9 times out of 10, we know that's happening. And if we don't know that something's happened, we cannot be prepared to protect you and your family. So even if you think it's a small thing, tell us, shoot us an email.
What do you want foster parents to know about licensing?
We are your support. We have your back. That is all. Please use us. Please call us. If you don't know what you are doing or who to call us first, because I promise you, we will get you to where you need to go, or we will get an answer to whatever it is that you need, even if we can't do it ourselves.
When I have spoken about you to other people, I talk about you behind your back all the time.
Oh, goodness.
The thing I say about you is that you're a problem solver. If and not to say that my licensing specialist isn't a problem solver, she's amazing. But when there are things that nobody seems to be able to accomplish, when I have reached out to you in the past, it's like you just it's all of a sudden the solution is that easy and it's just done. So. That's pretty
nice.
Awesome.
That's really nice to hear, and thank you, because we don't often get that. It's kind of like, hey, you're doing great, but we need this a little bit more. So it's nice to take that, but certainly we could not do what we do without without our wonderful human foster parents.
What do you want the partners that you work with to know about licensing and placement?
Call us. We do have a lot of answers. Same thing, when in doubt, ask us. We don't just know licensing. We don't just know placement. A lot of us have had so many different roles within the system. I mean, heck, some of us have even been foster parents. So, so, you know, I feel like some people forget that we're here, because there's a lot of times people get into court and they're like, well, I don't know the answer. Well, can they do this? Well, I don't, call us. I mean, I had a judge recently reach out to me, and I've never had that. And she actually emailed me directly and was like, hey, I have a couple questions. And
Wow.
I mean, and I kind of panicked because we don't always have that role of being in front of the judge. And I was like, do I respond with Your Honor? Like in an email? Like, is that what I do? I don't know. But I did. And it felt good because somebody was actually, like, sometimes we're kind of like those, I don't know, we're kind of in the back scene of everything, and but
the bones.
Our role is
The bones.
Yes.
The bones.
And maybe we're only seen in an X-ray, but we are seen. But we really are just, we want to do what we can to help those that are even directly, you know, caring for our children. It doesn't matter, again, if it's, you know, a birth parent or a foster parent or, you know, a caregiver of any sort.
The great thing about all this is so much of like the disgruntled attitude that I get from people is just people not having any power and not knowing where to go.
And I think that's it. And I mean, it's almost like the kids in the system, they don't have any control. They don't have choices. Like, and so one aspect of their life they want to control, they will. Like, maybe they don't eat. Maybe that's the aspect. And so there is a piece of that control. And I feel like it happens to us too, as much as we 100%. Don't want to admit that.
We speed because we have no control. And we're like, you want to make me go under 70? Watch me go 80. Yeah. And we don't admit that, but it's true. That's what we do.
Yeah. And we think about kids who do that. And it's like, oh, they're just, no. I mean, that's just.
They have no control.
Yeah.
They didn't know they were going to wake up in foster care and then be moved or whatever.
It's almost that crisis mode all the time. And even for our foster families, I mean, that's kind of where we're all at. And boy, I wish we could all just have a big day off and have nothing happen, like a mental health day for all of us. But that, I mean, we are here. We're all here for the same reason. And that's to make sure kids are safe. You know, they achieve permanency and we strengthen, you know, them as wholes. And that's all we can do, and together we can achieve so much more than individually.
So Red, one of the things that most of the people that have worked with you always brag about you for, and something that I always brag about you for, is that you're very child focused. Well, I feel like this is how we should all be. It's not always the case when we work with various partners. What is it that keeps you from being jaded, burnt out? What is it that keeps you from losing hope?
It's taken me a long time to get here, so I think it's all about perspective. I want to lose focus. I want to yell and scream every single day, but I know that's not going to solve it. I think what I have learned about myself is I may be in that mode, but the minute that somebody comes to me and is feeling the same way or struggling or stressed or can't find it, it's like you go into, and I don't even know, like dark mode. It's almost like it's all a blank, you know, like in, I think it was, what was it, Old School, where they had that debate and all of a sudden he's like, and blah, 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 and then it's like, whoa, what happened? Like, that's kind of what it feels like, is like I could be having the worst day, but then I get a phone call and someone needs me, and it's like you just flip the switch and you're there. You're either going to sink or swim. And that's the biggest thing. And if you can't get your mind to focus in the right direction, you're not, you know, you're gonna have broken your life jacket right off.
So the secondary trauma that we all experience in child welfare is very real. And I know sometimes we feel the trauma fatigue pushing into our minds and know it's time for a pedicure or something like that. What do you do to renew your mind when that starts to happen? And what are the symptoms you notice?
I mean, I get there often. So something as simple as going for a walk or going to spend time with my dog, because no matter if I'm crying or laughing, like, he's still going to love me. You know, it's like that one thing. He'll always kiss me. I feed him, I give him water, like, you know. So just reminding yourself to do something that can get you out of that. It's finding that one thing that does make me feel good. I'm very big into meditation, into yoga, into making sure that I take care of my body physically, mentally, whatever that looks like. So I have found that picking up, as I mentioned, I do teach yoga, I teach spinning and rowing, and so I've actually started to pick up a few more classes, although it should be for me and not for other people. That's just where I feel like it makes me feel better. I could be having such an awful day, and it happens quite often that I get into class and it's like, we just sweat all of that out, and any like negative, stale energy, anything that was holding me back from being able to be that person that I am needs to go. And so for me, that's mine, but I can't say that people, maybe it doesn't help to, nap. I mean, I'm not going to say some good food or candy now and then, like gummy bears, doesn't help. We know that's a temporary fix, but it's really about having that self-care balance. And I'm not going to say that I've always been good, but I've struggled with it, and especially during COVID, because you learn that there were no more boundaries. Like, where I work is now where I sleep and where I eat. And for me, I did. And I think for anyone to sit here and say that they didn't have any effects of that would be lying. And everybody had an impact one way or another. I know for my parents, let's say, having to deal with a virtual world was new for them. This isn't something that, heck, I'm lucky I get text messages from my parents, It's
Right.
So I will say, I think coming out of this pandemic, the best thing that I could have learned for myself is how to take care of myself, or realizing when I need it the most.
Yeah, I think that's really wise, because that can be really hard
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
identify.
I remember the first time that I saw trauma fatigue for myself, and it was when, because back before courtrooms were virtual, we would go to the court and we would sit there. And, you would get a time for your court hearing for your kids, and I would go, and, there might be like 10 or 15 cases before your case is called. And I would listen to what was going on with the other cases, and I would start crying. And I'm like, okay, I know, like, I'm a pretty sensitive person, but I don't normally cry at court. And it was just like everything that happened to every kid just broke my heart. We went and got a pedicure, Kat and I, last week. Well, it was her birthday, so
Happy belated birthday, Karen.
So do you remember when we went in, like, I tried to get a Starbucks, the line was like an hour long. I ended up going to a second Starbucks to get our Starbucks, and then I went to the place that we like to go to get our pedicures.
It was a
and
hard
it was
day.
closed for no reason, but really I was upset about a situation with guardian ad litems, and when I was texting you that I was getting on my way, and I was like raging in my head about this guardian ad litem situation that I just think is like so frustrating. And we finally get there, and I'm like, and you're like, you asked me if I wanted something to eat, and I'm like, I can't even eat right now. I just don't feel good. I'm so like stressed out and upset. I walked out of that pedicure like a totally different person. So
I'm so glad. I think that's not the topic of this podcast, but I think
that is
one of the valuing each other, I think, is critical. And I think that one of the impacts of COVID is that we do take care of each other better. Like, one of my friends today said, "You seem stressy. What's wrong?" And I was like,
Stressy, I like that.
I do too.
Love words like that.
I know. And I was like, I don't know how you could tell, because all this was via text.
Yeah.
But I am stressy. And I'll take care of myself today. I went back to work when my 11-year-old was 2 months old, and I started writing CBHAs. And I know that getting beds is so hard for kids. It's probably the hardest thing. And I know you don't really have a lot of control, because you have to just get what you can. I would go to group homes sometimes to write a CBHA on, like, whatever, a grade school child, and I would see a newborn or a baby sometimes. And I would just want to go hold the baby, and it would be like a worker, like a shift worker or whatever, like, just kind of like bouncing the baby around, like the baby would be like fussy or whatever. And I would say, like, can I just like,
Let me just try.
can I just like swaddle the baby? And they'd be like, take it, like, take the baby. And and then I would be so like heartbroken, like, we need more foster parents. We need more foster. Of course, not knowing the story, maybe they were placed with siblings. Who knows? Like, maybe all the siblings were there. Maybe that was, who knows? But to me, that was always the yardstick for where placement was with beds. If I always felt like, and I could be totally off base, but I always felt like if I saw a baby, things must not be going well.
Yeah, that's and you're not far off. That is how we now have rules about group homes, and there's some laws that are coming into play that will actually be changing the way that we do this group home thing, where it's not going to be shift care workers anymore. It's moving towards more of a foster family model.
That's
or more of a therapeutic, geared home. So there is a lot changing for the good. I know that the last thing we want is kids in the most restrictive settings, which are those facilities.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're right, we don't have enough. A lot of times we think about it like, hey, who can we stretch? The long and the short of it is, with the increase in care coming in, we've seen such an increase. We don't have enough beds. There are not enough beds to house all of the children that need a safe, stable home. And unfortunately, that's where we see kids in group homes or kids bouncing because we just don't have enough of those foster family homes. So that would be the goal, is to increase our bed capacity by as much. I mean, if you've never thought about it, think about it, and don't wait because you need things to fall in line to do this. Kids don't wait for things to fall in line
and things
for
will
them.
never fall in line the way you can always come up with
don't
excuses.
remove me from my parents until I get through my my birthday in 2 days so I can bring cupcakes into school. No. Unfortunately, abuse and neglect doesn't care what day or what time it is or what class you are. It affects everybody.
And that's always what I share when people talk about how they're thinking about being a foster parent is, but would you just like take a newborn? Because there are like babies. There are, who could just use a home. There are little guys who could just use a home.
I think, so not everybody is meant to be a foster parent, obviously. However, so many more people are meant to be foster parents than are. And we let ourselves off the hook with all these reasons why we're not doing it right now. But I feel like if you could just see it. It was like when I adopted my oldest son. We lived in Africa for 2 months, completing the process, and I came home and I'm like, how do people not know that this is going on over there? That these kids are living in the street and they're walking up to the van with their hand out, they're starving. These kids are living in I would go and volunteer in orphanages when I was there, and you would walk in and there's just lines of cribs. And these babies are I remember there were always a couple sick babies, and it's they sounded like they were about to die, and there was nobody even in the room with them. And it's just life is so different there than it is here. Obviously we have our own problems here that are different from they are there. It was like that. It was I wish I could just show people what I saw there. I wish I could just show them the pictures of these babies laying in bed. When I was there, I just wanted to somehow show people look at what's going on. There are these kids that are there that just they just need food. These people don't have food. If there's no vegetables growing in their garden that day, they go down to the city and they try and beg for food. And sometimes they get food for the kids and sometimes they don't. But at most they were eating a meal a day, and we just can't even fathom. My kids today, after
your kids
breakfast,
have 9 meals a day.
Peach pancakes. They had peach pancakes. They had snack after snack after snack. They had peanut butter and jelly with bananas inside, peaches on the side, chips, popcorn, and then they had 2 more snacks, and then they had bacon cheeseburgers for dinner with broccoli.
If I ate like Jack's kids, I'd be 900 pounds.
I'll be here tomorrow. What time does breakfast start?
They had ice pops, and then they were I'm starving, and it's oh my gosh.
Yeah, there's
you
no
don't
way.
even know.
But it's those experiences that make you shift gears, because I would see kids in foster homes all the time, and it's not what everybody thinks. And people are how do you do it? I'm it's not, every child is not beaten. It's not what you think. Foster parents were supportive, but it was those babies in those group homes that would make me pause and say, we need more foster parents desperately.
That is it. I mean, I think for everybody, it's that one thing that's I mean, and I'll tell you, I mean, I still get, when I walk through an office and I know that I see that birth parent there with bags ready to see their kid, so emotional.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
It is tough. It's
so
tough
hard.
even to sit here and talk about it. I mean, it triggers emotions, and that just means that we're human and that we do care, and sometimes we care too much.
What do you think the community can do to prevent more kids coming into care in our counties?
Oh, I feel like that we're just going to come up against support. Check in on each other. What can I do to help you? Do you need a break? Because oftentimes maybe that it's a generational thing, and maybe that family didn't have a good role model, and they don't have the supports, and maybe just you being my neighbor and seeing I am kind of stressed. Maybe you just need an hour away, or maybe I can just watch your kiddos for you or maybe bring you dinner. Just anything that we can do to support each other, I think is gonna have such a big impact. I mean, I look at us as an agency when it comes to Christmas, and it was scary this year with COVID because we do have a lot of events. We have a lot of things that raise money for children for Christmas, and it's scary to think that we're not going to have that. But the amount, like, and I'm getting goosebumps thinking about this, but the amount the community stepped up and filled those voids was unbelievable. And so I think that if we could all just focus on how to support each other and forget about what makes us different as humans, whether that be, you know, a race and ethnicity. I think if we could all just get past that and just remember that kindness is first and foremost, you know, how to support each other and something so small. I feel like if everyone could just step up and do one thing, that we could see such a big difference.
So what are your goals to make change in our community?
I am going to keep waking up every day, and I'm going to show up, and I'm going to hold space, and I am going to continue to do the best that I can to help somebody get past a situation that may not be ideal. That's me. I'm going to continue to support my staff. We're all doing this work. I'm just going to keep on trying to stay positive and reminding myself of who I am and what I'm here for, because I think that's hard to keep that focus when you get so many discouraging things happen. So for me, that's what I'm going to do. And maybe I can impact one other person to do the same.
Well, and I think between, you know, what you do with licensing and also the impact that you've had going into group homes and doing your programs, like, I think that's pretty profound.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This has been so fun.
This was really fun.
So grateful that you drove all the way over here in the rain, and just really appreciate all of the things that you've shared with us, and, you know.
Of course, and thank you to both of you for doing what you're doing and bringing awareness, and just, I think this is one of the first steps in really trying to develop a system where we don't not have beds for children. So they always say it's that rule of three, hearing something, then hearing it again, and then hearing it again. So if this is something small or big, whatever that may be, I mean, I'm just so thankful for the both of you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure you subscribe and follow us on social. We hope that you join us again next time and keep on fostering the future.